I want to tell you today, you may be facing something that feels bigger than you. The pressure is strong. The obstacles seem overwhelming. And you're wondering how it's all going to work out. But I believe God sent me here to remind you He's already gone before you. He's already lined up the right people, the right breaks, the right answers. What you're worried about, what's keeping you up at night, God is whispering to your spirit, hold on. Don't give up now. I've already worked it out for you. You may not see it yet, you may not feel it yet, but behind the scenes, the Creator of the universe is arranging things in your favor. What looks permanent is only temporary. What looks impossible is about to shift. God specializes in sudden turnarounds. And if you'll stay in faith, if you'll keep pressing forward, you're going to step into the very things He's already prepared for you. Sometimes in life we face seasons that feel like we're moving backward instead of forward. You pray, you believe, you stay faithful, but then something happens that doesn't make sense. The promotion goes to someone else, the relationship ends, the deal falls through, and suddenly it looks like you've been pushed down instead of lifted up. It's easy in those moments to get discouraged, to think that God has forgotten you, or that your prayers aren't being answered. But what you have to realize is that what looks like a setback is not the final word. To you it may look like things are falling apart, but to God, it's a setup for something greater than you can imagine. He knows the end from the beginning, and He never allows something to be taken away unless He has something better prepared. The Scripture says that God orders the steps of the righteous. That means every step you've taken, even the ones that look like mistakes or detours, are being used by God to position you for the blessing He already has in store. That disappointment you face, that closed door, that unexpected turn is not random. It's part of the master plan of the Creator of the universe. He knows how to take what the enemy meant for harm and use it for your good. You may not see it right now, but one day you'll look back and realize that if it hadn't been for that so-called setback, you wouldn't be standing in the greater opportunity that God had waiting. Think about Joseph in the Scripture. He had a dream that one day he would rule, that he would lead, that God's favor was on his life. But instead of going straight to the throne, he was betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit, sold as a slave, and wrongfully imprisoned. For years, it looked like his life was going backward. People probably thought he was forgotten, that he had missed his chance. But what looked like a setback was really a setup. Every twist, every unfair situation, every closed door was leading him closer to the palace. When the time was right, God took him from the prison to the palace in a single day, and he stepped into the destiny that had been spoken over him from the beginning. That's how God works in our lives. You may be in a pit right now. You may be in a season that feels unfair, but it's not the end of the story. The same God who lifted Joseph is the same God working in your life. That closed door isn't rejection, it's redirection. The delay isn't punishment, it's preparation. What looks like a setback is God setting you up for something you couldn't have gotten to any other way. Without the pit, Joseph never would have met the people who led him to the palace. Without the betrayal, he never would have been in the place where God needed him to be. Sometimes what feels like loss is actually the very thing God uses to position you for gain. You may have been overlooked at work, but God is setting you up for a better position with greater influence. You may have gone through a breakup, but God is setting you up for the person who will love and value you the way you deserve. You may have faced a financial struggle, but God is setting you up to see His provision in a way that will strengthen your faith forever. You can't see the whole picture right now, but God can. He knows how every detail fits together, and nothing you've gone through has been wasted. The challenge is to not give up in the setback. It's to trust that God is still in control when you don't understand. You have to remind yourself that He's still on the throne. He's still fighting your battles. He's still working all things together for your good. The enemy wants you to believe that the setback is permanent, but God says it's only temporary. The enemy wants you to think you've been pushed down, but God says He's about to lift you up higher than before. You may have lost one opportunity, but God is preparing a better one. You may have been delayed, but you have not been denied. Every time something didn't work out, every time you felt like you were moving backward, God was still keeping His hand on your life. He was still protecting you, still guiding you, still positioning you. Just like a bow has to be pulled back before it's released forward. Sometimes God allows you to be pulled back so He can launch you further than you ever dreamed. The further back the bow is pulled, the further the arrow can fly. That setback is a sign that a great release is coming. That God is about to thrust you into a cellar of acceleration favored, sense of alpha makes sense of everything you've been through. There are moments in life when it feels like everything is taking longer than it should. You've prayed, you've believed, you've done your best to stay faithful, but the answer hasn't shown up yet. The promotion hasn't come. The healing hasn't manifested. The breakthrough seems delayed. And you're left wondering if maybe it's never going to happen. It's easy in those seasons to grow discouraged and to think God has forgotten you. But what you need to understand is that delays are not denials. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it isn't going to happen. God is a God of perfect timing. And while you're waiting, He's working behind the scenes, arranging things in your favor. The Scripture reminds us that through faith and patience we inherit the promises. That means it's not just faith that causes the promise to manifest, it's faith mixed with patience. Patience is the bridge between believing and receiving. Many times God allows us to wait because the situation isn't fully prepared or we aren't fully prepared. The delay is not wasted time, it's preparation time. Every moment you spend waiting is shaping your character, strengthening your faith, teaching you endurance, and preparing you for the weight of the blessing God is bringing into your life. If He gave it to you too soon, you might not be ready to handle it. But when the delay has accomplished its purpose, the promise will come to pass in a way that leaves no doubt it was God who did it. Think about Abraham. God gave him a promise that he would be the father of many nations, but years went by without a child. It looked like nothing was happening. It looked like God had forgotten. But God had not changed His mind. At the appointed time, when it seemed impossible, Sarah conceived, and the promise was fulfilled. The delay didn't mean denial. The promise was still alive, even when it looked dead. That's how God works. He often does His greatest miracles in the face of the greatest delays. What you're waiting on is not forgotten. It's simply being aligned with God's timing. Sometimes God delays because He's working on people connected to your destiny. The right people aren't in place yet. The right opportunities haven't lined up, or the right doors haven't opened. If He moved too soon, you wouldn't meet the people who are assigned to help you fulfill your purpose. Other times the delay is because God is protecting you. That closed door you didn't understand, that opportunity that didn't work out, that relationship that ended, it wasn't God denying you. It was God delaying you so He could protect you from something that wasn't His best. His delays are filled with love and wisdom, even when they don't make sense to us in the moment. When you learn to trust God in the delays, you grow stronger in your faith. Waiting teaches you to depend not on what you see, but on what you believe. It teaches you to rest in the fact that God is faithful even when circumstances aren't. Every delay is an invitation to lean more deeply on His promises. You may not know how or when He will do it, but you can know for certain that He will do it. The waiting room is not a place of punishment. It's a place of preparation. It's where God shapes you for what's ahead, where He strengthens your spiritual muscles, where He refines your heart so that when the promise comes, you're ready to carry it well. Think about David. He was anointed king as a teenager, but he didn't step into the throne until many years later. He faced giants. He hid in caves. He ran from Saul. And he endured seasons of delay that looked like denial. But every battle, every hardship, every moment of waiting was preparing him for the throne. If he had been placed there too soon, he might not have been able to handle the weight of leadership. But after the waiting, after the delays, he stepped into his destiny at exactly the right time. The same is true for you. The delay you're experiencing is not the end of the story. The longer the wait, the greater the preparation. God has not abandoned what He promised. He's simply getting everything aligned so that when it happens, it will exceed your expectations. The waiting is a sign that something significant is on the way. You may feel like it's been too long, but God is never late. His timing is precise, and when He brings it to pass, you'll see that the delay was never denial. It was part of His perfect design. There are times in life when we face battles that seem far too big for us to fight on our own. The obstacles tower over us, the opposition feels overwhelming, and the weight of the problem makes us feel powerless. You may be dealing with something right now that feels way out of your control. It could be a financial burden, a health challenge, a relationship struggle, or a dream that seems unreachable. And everything in you wants to fix it, to work harder, to carry the load yourself. But what we have to remember is this: your job is not to figure it all out, your job is to trust. God's job is to fight the battles you cannot fight. The Scripture says that the battle belongs to the Lord. That means you don't have to carry the pressure of trying to make everything happen in your own strength. God never asked you to figure out all the details. He never asked you to handle every burden. He simply asked you to trust Him, to rest in Him, to believe that He is able to do what you cannot do. When you step back and release control, that's when you see God step in and do the impossible. But as long as you're holding on tight, trying to force things, you're not giving Him room to work. Surrender is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of faith. It's saying, God, I know you're bigger than this problem, and I'm trusting you to handle what I cannot. Think about the Israelites when they were trapped at the Red Sea. The Egyptian army was chasing them, mountains were on both sides, and the sea was in front of them. There was no way out. In the natural, it looked hopeless. But God spoke through Moses and said, stand still, and you will see the deliverance of the Lord. He was reminding them, this is not your battle. You can't part the waters. You can't defeat Pharaoh's army, but I can. And in that moment, God split the sea and made a way where there was no way. That's what He does when you trust Him. He specializes in making the impossible possible. There's something powerful that happens when you let go of the need to control and simply trust that God is working. That doesn't mean you sit back and do nothing. You still take steps of faith. You still do your part, but you do it with a spirit of rest, knowing that the outcome is not on your shoulders. When David faced Goliath, he didn't fight him with swords or armor. He simply declared, the battle is the Lord's, and trusted God to give him the victory. He picked up his sling, he did his part, but he knew the power behind the stone was not his own strength, it was God's. That same power is working in your life when you trust instead of worry, when you release instead of control. Maybe you've been fighting something for a long time and you're worn out because you've been trying to carry it alone. You're stressed, you're anxious, you're losing sleep. But God is saying you don't have to fight this battle. Let Maine take it from here. The moment you turn it over to Him, peace will come, strength will rise, and doors will begin to open. He has angels He can send, people He can position, solutions you've never thought of. You may be limited, but He is unlimited. When you do your part and trust, He will do His part and deliver. Trusting God doesn't mean the problem disappears overnight. Sometimes He allows us to walk through battles to build our faith. But even in those moments, He's fighting for us. Just because you can't see Him working doesn't mean He's not working. Behind the scenes, He's arranging circumstances, softening hearts, and shifting things in your favor. The enemy wants you to think you're alone, but you're never alone. The same God who shut the mouths of lions for Daniel, the same God who cooled the fiery furnace for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the same God who raised Lazarus from the dead, is the same God who is fighting your battles right now. When you choose to trust instead of trying to control, you're showing God that you believe His word is true. You're declaring that He is bigger than the sickness, greater than the financial problem, stronger than the opposition. That trust is what activates His power in your life. The more you rest in Him, the more you'll see Him working things out in ways you never could have orchestrated. That's why the Scripture says to cast your cares on Him, because He cares for you. You weren't designed to carry the weight of the world. You were designed to walk in faith, to live in peace, to stand still, and watch the Lord fight for you. There are seasons in life when it feels like nothing is moving, nothing is changing, and the things you're believing for seem out of reach. You've prayed, you've declared, you've stood in faith, yet on the outside it looks like nothing is happening. That dream still hasn't come to pass, the healing hasn't manifested, the breakthrough hasn't shown up. It can be tempting to think that maybe it's not meant to be, or that God has forgotten what He promised. But the truth is, the breakthrough is already prepared, you just haven't seen it yet. What you're waiting for is not being created, it's being revealed at the right time. The Scripture says that God has already blessed us with every spiritual blessing in the heavenly realms. That means He's not scrambling to put together your answer or trying to figure out how to help you. It's already done. The provision, the healing, the opportunity, the right connections, they've already been lined up with your name on them. Just because you can't see it in the natural doesn't mean it's not real. Faith is what bridges the gap between what God has prepared and what you experience. When you stay in faith, you position yourself to step into what God has already finished. Think about the story of Daniel. He prayed for God to answer him, and for 21 days nothing seemed to happen. He could have thought his prayer wasn't working, but the angel showed up and said, "From the first day you prayed, your words were heard, and I was sent to bring the answer." The breakthrough was already on the way. But there was opposition in the unseen realm. What looked like silence was not denial. It was simply a delay in the delivery. That's what happens many times in our lives. The moment you prayed, God dispatched the answer. But there may be things happening in the unseen realm that you don't know about. That's why it's so important to keep believing even when nothing looks different. When a seed is planted in the ground, you don't see growth right away. For weeks, sometimes months, it looks like nothing is happening. But beneath the soil, the roots are spreading, the seed is developing, and life is forming. Just because it's hidden doesn't mean it's not working. In the same way, your breakthrough is developing beneath the surface. Every prayer, every declaration of faith, every act of trust is watering that seed. At the right time, it's going to break through the soil and manifest in your life. If you give up too soon, you'll miss the harvest that was already prepared for you. The Israelites were promised a land flowing with milk and honey, but they had to journey through the wilderness before they entered it. The land was already theirs. God had already set it aside with their name on it, but it took faith, patience, and endurance to actually walk into what had been promised. The same is true for you. The blessing, the opportunity, the open door, it already exists in God's plan. He's not deciding whether to give it to you. He's preparing you to receive it. The challenge is to not let the waiting make you doubt what's already finished. You may not see the job opportunity yet, but it's already lined up. You may not see the healing yet, but it's already been provided for. You may not see the right relationship yet, but God already knows the exact person and the exact timing. The key is to live with the confidence that the breakthrough is not in question. It's certain because God has already worked it out. Your role is to stay in peace, to hold on to faith, and to keep preparing as if the answer is on its way, because it is. This is why Scripture says we walk by faith and not by sight. If you only believe when you see, that's not faith. Faith says, I don't see it yet, but I know it's on the way. Faith says, I may not feel healed yet, but I believe healing has already been released. Faith says, I may not see how the situation can change, but I know God has already made a way. That kind of faith is what causes the unseen to become seen. It brings into reality what God has already declared over your life. You may feel stuck in a season of silence, but silence does not mean absence. Just because you don't see movement doesn't mean God isn't moving. Behind the curtain of the natural world, He's shifting things, orchestrating people, and aligning circumstances so that when the time is right, the breakthrough that's already prepared will show up suddenly. One moment you'll feel like nothing is happening, and the next moment everything will fall into place. That's how God works. He prepares it in advance, and then at the right time, He reveals it to you. There are times when it feels like the pressure is too much, when the weight of waiting makes you want to give up, and when every voice around you is telling you it's not going to happen. Those are the moments when faith is tested the most. Anyone can believe when everything looks good, when doors are opening, when prayers are being answered. But real faith is proven when nothing looks like it's working, yet you choose to keep believing. Holding on in faith when it doesn't make sense is what positions you for God's sudden favor. Favor that you couldn't have earned. Favor that will shift things in a moment. Favor that takes you from the back to the front. From overlooked to chosen. From waiting to suddenly walking in the promise. The Scripture says that at just the right time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. That means the only thing that can stop you from stepping into the blessing is if you let go too soon. The enemy knows he can't take what God has promised you. So his strategy is to wear you down, to make you tired, to tempt you to quit. He whispers that it's taking too long, that maybe you misunderstood God, that it's never going to happen. But the truth is, the longer the wait, the greater the setup. The more pressure you feel, the closer you are to the release. If you'll hold on a little longer, you'll see God show up in ways that will leave you amazed. Think about the woman with the issue of blood. For 12 years she suffered, spent everything she had, and saw no improvement. She had every reason to give up, but she kept holding on to the hope that things could change. One day she heard that Jesus was passing by, and with all the faith she had left, she pressed through the crowd and touched the hem of His garment. In that instant, her years of pain were turned into a sudden miracle. What looked permanent changed in a moment. Her story reminds us that favor doesn't take years to manifest. It can show up suddenly when you refuse to let go of faith. There's something about holding on when it's hardest that gets God's attention. Paul and Silas were beaten and thrown into prison for their faith. At midnight, instead of complaining, they began to pray and sing praises. They could have given up. but they held on to their faith in the darkest hour. Suddenly, the prison doors flew open and their chains fell off. That's how God works. When you hold on in faith, He can cause sudden turnarounds, sudden breakthroughs, sudden shifts that don't make sense to the natural mind. One touch of His favor can undo years of struggle in a single moment. Holding on doesn't mean you won't feel tired. It doesn't mean you won't have doubts, but it does mean you refuse to quit. You keep showing up, you keep believing, you keep expecting, even when the evidence says otherwise. That perseverance builds strength in your spirit. It teaches you to depend on God more deeply, to rely not on your own strength, but on His grace. Every day you choose to hold on, you're proving to God that you trust Him, that you believe His word above what you see. And that kind of faith never goes unrewarded. Sometimes the greatest blessings come after the greatest pressure. Just like a diamond is formed under intense heat and pressure, your faith is being refined in the waiting. Every time you hold on, you're being shaped into someone who can carry the weight of the blessing that's coming. If God gave it to you too soon, it might crush you. But when you've been tested, when you've endured, when you've held on through the fire, you'll be ready into the favor without being overwhelmed by it. The process prepares you for the promise. You may not see anything changing right now, but that doesn't mean God isn't working. Behind the scenes, He's aligning opportunities, positioning people, and setting things in motion that you couldn't orchestrate on your own. Favor is not about your ability, your connections, or your resources. It's about God's supernatural hand on your life. And His favor can show up at any moment. That's why you can't let go. Because you never know when the breakthrough is about to happen. It may take one more prayer, one more act of faith, one more day of holding on, and suddenly everything shifts. The enemy wants you to believe that the delay means denial, but God says the delay is part of the setup. The favor that's coming will not only answer your prayers, but exceed your expectations. It will happen suddenly, in a way you couldn't have planned, in a way that gives God all the glory. Holding on in faith is not wasted effort. It's the key that unlocks sudden favor, the kind of favor that changes everything in an instant. There are moments in life when it feels like everything is turned against you. People you trusted let you down. Opportunities slipped through your fingers. Circumstances shifted in ways you never expected. It's natural to feel discouraged, to wonder why things didn't work out the way you hoped, to question if all the pain and struggle has a purpose. But what you need to remember is this: what the enemy meant for harm, God has already turned for your good. Before the setback ever came, God had already written a plan to use it to your advantage. Nothing the enemy brings against you can override the promise of God. The Scripture says in Romans that all things work together for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. Notice it doesn't say some things are only the good things. It says all things. That means the betrayals, the disappointments, the losses, even the mistakes you've made, God knows how to weave them into His plan for your life. The enemy's goal is to harm you, but God takes those very things and flips them, turning them into stepping stones that move you closer to your destiny. What was meant to destroy you becomes the very thing God uses to elevate you. Think about Joseph. His brothers betrayed him, threw him into a pit, sold him as a slave, and lied to their father about him. Later, he was falsely accused and imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. For years, it looked like his life was ruined, that everything had gone wrong. But at the right time, God raised him up to be second in command over all of Egypt. When famine struck, Joseph was the one who had the wisdom to save not only the Egyptians, but his own family. When his brothers stood before him, afraid of what he might do, Joseph declared, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." That's the same declaration you can make over your life. What others try to use to break you, God is using to bless you. Sometimes the greatest blessings come wrapped in packages we don't like. The betrayal pushed Joseph into position. The prison became the pathway to the palace. Without the struggle, he never would have stepped into his destiny. The same is true for you. The difficulty you're facing is not random. The hurt, the loss, the setback, it's all part of a bigger plan that is leading you to something greater. God knows how to take what looks like the worst season of your life and turn it into the most powerful testimony. You may have been rejected by people, but God will use that rejection to direct you to those who will celebrate you. You may have lost a job, but God can use that loss to open the door to a better opportunity. You may have gone through heartbreak, but God can use it to lead you to deeper love than you imagined. Nothing is wasted in the hands of God. Every tear, every disappointment, every closed door, He recycles it all for your good. The enemy wants you to focus on the harm, to replay the pain, to get stuck in bitterness. But when you shift your perspective and realize that God is still in control, you'll see that what was meant to break you has only made you stronger. What was meant to stop you has actually prepared you. Every obstacle has trained you for the blessing that's coming. Every setback has sharpened you for the assignment ahead. The very thing the enemy thought would be your downfall is becoming your setup for breakthrough. This is why you can live with confidence even in difficult seasons. Because no weapon formed against you will prosper. It may form, it may come against you. It may feel like it's working, but it will not succeed in the end. God has already turned it around. He's already shifted it in your favor. The enemy doesn't have the final word over your life, God does. And His word says that goodness and mercy will follow you all the days of your life. That His plans are to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a hope and a future. Every time you face harm, you have a choice. You can give in to discouragement, or you can stand in faith knowing that God is still working. You can let the enemy's attack defeat you, or you can declare, this is not how my story ends. God is using this for my good. That declaration shifts your mindset. It lifts your spirit. And it positions you to see God's hand turning things in ways you never expected. What the enemy meant for harm has no power to stop the blessing God has already spoken over your life.